Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh, for that amazing lecture. Just want to say, in the spirit of things, every week after Jumu'ah, we actually hold a dawah booth outside of Arch. So if anyone wants to volunteer, we're going to be sending out a form. So if you want to help us give dawah, you want to help us hand out brochures, do it Imam Siraj was suggesting, then inshallah that will be there. Jazakallah khair. And now turn it over to Rayan Fadl. He's going to be talking about lighting the lamps, political advocacy in the city of brotherly love. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, we'll take a 5-minute break so you guys can go to the bathroom, get some water, and then our speakers will roll in and we'll start the program session, inshallah. Thank you. So one of them is
I was looking for you.
Oh my bad, I grabbed the
I didn't know all the way upstairs to the end, and I was like, I can't find it.
When you gave that intro, which mic did you use? This one, did you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I said, Assalamu alaikum, my name is Shanawaz. So, oh, are you doing this?
Not this one, I'm doing spoken word.
There's the other ones over there. No, it's on the podium. Yo, Aisha, can we fix the lighting system panel?
Can you? I gave you guys the coupon one. It's on mute right now, and then
Oh,
once it's ready, just like.
Where did we go?
Where are you? Alright, this is for you. That's your coupon.
What did you copy and paste? Like from the program guide. He didn't say anything.
Yeah, but they won't say anything about that.
It's all right.
Okay, we're only waiting for Dr. Ahmed.
You are a council person or? Say that.
Okay.
Okay.
I just want to check.
Yep, and I just had to, I'm also a wife, so I had to check in with my husband, let him know I arrived.
Right. Well, my wife.
This is
Superintendent Mohammed, we'll fill out the message, 47th and Wyalusing, in West Philadelphia.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
My sister
Yeah.
really said out,
okay,
outside of the city.
yeah, that's northwest.
Yo, Aisha, do you want me to turn? I think you should probably turn it off. That's gonna be in their face.
Dim it down.
You can't- No, that's not dim it down.
Oh, thank you.
Should we turn the screen off in the back?
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's good we had a break between us and Salaj.
Yeah.
So this is the program for next year, Clear Muhammad School.
Oh, wow.
We had 500 students
I'd say it looks like a school. Yeah, mashallah, that's a lot of
and the
students.
masjid is attached in the rear.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the best way to do it. Have you been down to our area?
Well, Wilmington,
Wilmington. Okay.
because I know Imam Rudolph Ali, the
Yeah,
Rudolph,
yeah.
Imam Muhammad Salam. I don't know if you know. Yeah.
I know this white. Yes. So that's, I should probably.
Wally Bushnan. Okay. Yeah, all of us came up in the Nation of Islam together, yeah.
So he's got a son, right?
Yeah.
Also, I just saw him and his son
Okay.
last weekend because
No, I
auditors
don't wanna.
inducted into the city.
Okay.
I will, yeah, no, I got those like that, but I was kind of. Alright, those mean all dramatic. Alright, come on, bro.
And I guess you know our brother here, Dr. Ahmed.
Yeah.
Testing. All right, if everybody can take a seat, please. We will be getting started soon. Folks in the back, find your places.
Yeah.
All right, I'll give everybody like one more minute just to get seated and we'll get started.
My calendar. I had to visit with my.
Okay. All right. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I appreciate that. My name is Rayyan Fadil. I am a senior here at the University of Pennsylvania. And today I'm going to be moderating the panel titled Lighting the Lamps, Political Advocacy in the City of Brotherly Love. It's a great title, whoever came up with it. But my advice to you as an audience, be engaged, listen, and have some questions ready because we have some very highly esteemed speakers today. And honestly, if I could ask my own questions, I would, but I want you guys to have some questions as well by the end of it. All right, so our speakers today come in various roles: public servants, officials, spiritual leaders, but perhaps most importantly, change makers within their respective communities and sometimes even ours. So what they're gonna be doing is they're gonna be taking Philadelphia and some neighboring communities and using that as a case study to discuss how Islam has played a role in their social engagements and responsibility to the people that they serve. So our our panelists today, I've been watching too much Phillies today, but our first person today is Imam Kenneth Nuriddin, Philly native, born and raised, so please ask him a lot of questions. But Imam Kenneth Nuriddin is currently serving as the resident Imam for the Philadelphia Masjid. He also served as a volunteer in the county prisons as a servicing Imam. He helped to start the United Muslim Masjid and became the first resident Imam there. Shortly afterwards, he helped to formulate a program within the Center for Community Partnerships at the University of Pennsylvania. He continues to serve, He continues to serve at the present as a member of the Penn Religious Community Council. Next, we have Representative Madinah Wilson-Anton. I love people in politics, mashallah. Representative Wilson-Anton was elected in 2020 to represent the 26th District of Delaware, where she grew up. She is an alumna of the University of Delaware, where she was a member of the MSA and holds a bachelor's degree in international relations and Asian studies. In 2022, she earned a master's degree in urban affairs and public policy from the University of Delaware's Biden School of Public Policy and Administration. Go Biden. As a state representative, Representative Wilson-Anton continues to fight for social, economic, and racial justice for all. And last but not least, we have Dr. Ahmet. Dr. Ahmet is the executive director at CARE Philadelphia. He previously served as Education and Outreach Director. He received his PhD in political science from Boston University in 2016. Concurrently, Ahmed directs the Digital Islamic Studies project, themaidan.com, at George Mason University, where he is a research fellow at the Center for Global Islamic Studies. So we please get a round of applause for our panelists today. Thank you. So, dear panelists, I'm going to start off with a question, and I'd love for to get an answer from each of you. But just to set some table stakes and foundation for everybody here, as change makers in your community, what does political advocacy mean to you? We'll start with you, Dr. Ahmed.
Should I pass to you, Imam?
No, please.
All right, Bismillah. So to me, what political change means, right? So that's the question. To me, political change means that everybody here in this room, right, act in one way or another at some level to remove harms in the society so that benefits can accrue, right? So the idea that, we all take our societal obligations in addition to our individual obligations seriously, right? So Fardhu Ain and Fardhu Kifaya seriously, and then think around how we can, right? So Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy anil Munkar, how we can encourage good and how we can remove harms. Because the scholars reflected, and Imam and Representative Medina can reflect more, reflected that, unless we do that, right? Unless we remove harms, benefits cannot accrue in the society. And for each of you, that might be different. For one person, it might be Palestine activism. For one person, it might be the UC town halls, right? So for another person, it might be around gun violence. It's just that each one of us needs to take that seriously, right? In my day job, alhamdulillah, I'm blessed to work with a Muslim nonprofit, to work on civil rights, to work on student activism, to work on advocacy, together with my colleague Asiya and others. So that's my short.
Yeah, I have a mic. Assalamu alaikum. Everybody in here has an endeavor in life. Something that not only you do or want to do, but something you should feel passionate about. And whatever your passion is, you should look to how you can actually implement what your passion is in society. And here's what we find out. the question was about public advocacy. Everything that exists in this environment is regulated by some policy or some procedure that is governed by an institution, whether it's political, educational, economical, health, etc. So wherever your passion is, you'll find issues or problems that need to be resolved. And as Imam Siraj said, just having a love for people means you want to bring some relief to them. So I'll just give you one brief analysis of where I came from, and you can get some perspective. Today, I'm coming from a janazah. I do about 2 or 3 janazahs a week. Many of them are homicides. We know the homicide rate. We know that there are institutions that have policies that need to be engaged so that we can begin to address the problem. And so if you're involved in something, you just can't react to things that happen. We have to advocate for change. And so we involve ourselves with the DA's office, with the criminal justice system, with the prison system, with the health, with the economic, with the education, because they're all interwoven. So respond to the challenges that life presents to us. And if you respond, you'll find yourself up to your neck and sometimes over your head and trying to bring about a change. But even if you're over your head, I'll quote what Reverend Al Sharpton said. No, not Al Sharpton, but Jesse Jackson. He said, deep water never kills anybody. It's only when you stop swimming. So keep swimming.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I had to make sure that the mic was working. I'm a little soft-spoken. My name is Madinah Wilson-Anton. I'm a state representative in Newark, Delaware, which is not our biggest city in Delaware, but one of the most populated with Muslims in our state. And in 2020, I was elected as the first and so far the only Muslim to our state's General Assembly. As somebody who's working in our General Assembly, I see political advocates all the time. Most of the time, we call them what you may have heard, lobbyists, right? We see lobbyists that lobby on behalf of tobacco, on behalf of alcohol manufacturers and distributors. We see people advocating for certain policies all the time, and often they're being paid to do so. But when I think about the Muslim community, I think about how we in Delaware especially need to be advocating for ourselves, for our community and our priorities more than we are already. And I can tell you in just the 2 years that I've been in this role, I've been able to bring issues that are important to our community to the agenda for our state. And a lot of times those issues that are important to our community are not controversial, they're not different, they're not, hard to understand. It's just that they never have thought about them because they don't impact them, right? And so I think it's really important for not just Muslims, but young Muslims in particular to take advantage of the fact that we do have a democracy. We do have a state, a city, a county, borough, where you can show up to public meetings, you can voice what's important to you and your community and bring a different perspective to the table. So I'm really excited that the MSA is having this conversation. I'm honored to be able to join you all for it, and I'm looking forward to answering some more questions.
Beautiful answers. Thank you so much. Okay, I'll be honest. Most of us here are students, and we're looking at the next stage of our lives with glazed eyes, aiming to be doctors, lawyers, consultants, associates, whatever the case may be, with likely salaries very much top of mind for us. I would love to know what have been the motivations for you guys to not only pursue your respective roles, but also the way you've infused Islam and advancing the Muslim community in those roles and taking that as almost your calling in life.
Do you want to start this time?
Sure. That's how panels work, right? Like the last person goes first, and then this is, I'm joining you guys during the middle of the day, so I'm not sure what else you've heard in the conference, but one of the lessons that I grew up learning, right, as a Muslim was that we're not supposed to see an injustice and do nothing about it. And I'm sure you're familiar with the teaching that if you can't change it, then you're supposed to speak out against it. And if you can't speak out against it, then you should at least hate it in your heart, right? I was always interested in politics. And so growing up in the Muslim community that was very diverse, from a young age, I was introduced to international affairs and how the US, how our policies impact the world. and why a lot of folks in my community came here because of those policies, right? Because of issues back home. So I was always interested in politics, but it was honestly a paid internship opportunity that came across my email inbox in a time when most internships I was seeing were not paid. And so I said, let me apply to this. And it was working in our state's General Assembly. So I got paid to go down there, work for the General Assembly. And in that experience, I learned how our state governs itself. And I learned to the extent that our state's policies impact everyday life, something I was not aware of. Once I learned that, and I learned about injustices that I was seeing not being addressed by our state, I think about that teaching, that if I'm aware of something that's going wrong and I have a skill set that can be used to address it, then it's my duty to do something about it. And so that was why I decided to run for office. That's why I continue to be involved in politics, as long as my community thinks that I should be. But that's just one part of it, right? That a Muslim is not supposed to stand by and watch problems fester and perpetuate without doing anything about it. Now, I have the privilege to be able to do this full time and get paid to do it, but there are a lot of other ways that you can be involved in the political process, whether it's protesting, whether it's coming down to your capital, your city council building and sharing what's important to you, whether it's encouraging people to vote and not just be an inshallah voter, but be a voter who's going to intend to vote, bi-idhnillah, right? There are lots of ways that you can get involved. So I would encourage everyone that's here to do that, to use your voice and bring about that change that we are required as Muslims to do.
Sometimes you get an opening, or sometimes they may call it a calling. In 1973, I had been the employee of the year. I worked for the city of Philadelphia. I was the employee of the year in 75, but I was also a student in the School of Architecture here in the city. But I was asked to come out of school and go and teach Arabic and Islamic studies at the Claire Muhammad School. We had about 500 students. And this was a community that grew out of the Nation of Islam, and there was a great need to learn Islam. And as Imam Siraj had mentioned, a few of us, Allah just blessed us to have not just the inclination, but he gave us an opening to learn. And so I came out of school, I came out of working for the government and came out of school and taught in a private Islamic school for probably half the money, having to contend with family who didn't understand at the time. But when things happen like that, you begin to get openings in other areas. I went into prison ministry and a few other aspects of what Islam, what service we have to provide for people. And as Muslims, we have to be those who serve the needs of people, because we know that this is really the calling that we have in Islam. Islam is not just for us as a personal, because personally we have the Aqidah, we have the Ibadah, that's for our personal life. But we have a kifaya, we have a fard kifaya, the community has needs. And if Allah blesses you to be able to fulfill the needs of the community, as the Quran says, وَابْتَغِي بِمَا أَتَاكَ اللَّهُ دَارَ الْآخِرَةِ, seek your place in the hereafter. But don't forget your portion of the dunya. وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا. So the goal that we have is to serve Allah in the manner that is best. We don't want to turn our backs on the dunya, but we want to have our priorities in order. So you may be called to make a sacrifice, as the followers of the Prophet made sacrifices. They were willing to give up everything. And then Allah blessed them to have everything. So this is really what this whole conference is about, because trailblazers and torch bearers is what you should see yourselves as.
Alhamdulillah. So in my case, it's two things. One, a personal experience. Actually, the experience of my twin sister. So I'm from Turkey. I came to States in 2007. So this is taking place in 1996 when we are in high school. In Turkey at the time, the government decides girls should not wear headscarf while going to school. And my sister was wearing a headscarf. So we are the same age, right? So twin brothers, sisters. I was able to go to school without any issues and all of that. And my sister, she was going every day crying. Am I gonna take it off? Like, you know, is it going to be a wig, right? So all things. So that impacted her psychologically, personally. And you realize, like, you know, there is not only injustice, right, that can come from many angles. There is also inequalities. I mean, there is also privilege. So, I mean, that experience, I mean, I'm not saying that in '96 I decided to work for a Muslim civil rights organization, but that stayed with me, right? The idea of speaking out against injustice, the idea that, yes, when you have an opportunity, you can use, you know, the tools in your hands to correct what is wrong. And I go back to that experience and I know what my sister experienced day in and day out. Right, and the struggles that she had to go through. And now, alhamdulillah, I work for a Muslim civil rights organization, and we try to help Muslims who face discrimination in this setting. And I find that, you know, valuable. I find that also is very challenging because it brings a lot of responsibility. And I go on that when I think around change, right? When I think about organizing our community. And together with that, the second thing is, you know, I always liked hearing stories and capturing stories from elders from our community. And then when I was doing my graduate work, I was able to do field work within American Muslim communities. And I know that there are many powerful stories within our communities and in this room as well. So the more we can get those out, the more we can open the path for our community to stand up for justice. I think, like, alhamdulillah, that's what keeps me going.
Beautiful answers again. Thank you. Okay, last question for myself as a moderator. There's always a looming political consciousness, especially, let's say, on a college campus, right? People are talking about politics in their dorm rooms and group chats. I get 20,000 ads a day from John Fetterman. Like, there's always some political discourse happening. But it's always changing as well. And it's evolving based on external environmental factors that are happening. I'd love to know, what are some changes in political consciousness that you guys have seen in your respective communities that have happened over time, let's say past 10 years, past 20 years? Would love to know that, please.
Okay, I guess I'll start this one.
Yes.
You know, back in 1992, on this campus here, a graduate student was killed. They didn't have the campus police, but they initiated the Department of Public Safety, and Maureen Rush, who was a police homicide detective in the Philadelphia Police Department, was onboarded, and she became the first director of public safety here on campus. That's when the Penn police started. And the Penn police, their function was to serve as armed guards to protect Penn students from the outer community. And so it created a lot of friction because really Penn is part of the West Philadelphia community. And so I came on board with the chaplain's office, with the Center for Community Partnerships, with the Office of Government and Community Affairs, and we were able to get the Penn Police Department to stand down and come out of the bunker mentality and see their own enlightened self-interest is to work with the community instead of working, protecting privileged people from the community at large. And through that, we began to negotiate a series of projects and programs that, while are not perfect, and any of you who are involved in the townhouse occupation movement, you know issues still exist. But at the same time, the venue for dialogue, and not just dialogue, but for change, has to be implemented by those who are willing to stand up for justice, even if it's against yourself. We are told, وَكُونُوا قَوَّامِينَ بِالْقِسْطِ شُهَدَاءَ لِلَّهِ وَلَا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِكُمْ. Be those who are firmly standing up for justice, witnesses for Allah, even if it's against yourself. So we had to face the issues of our community, but we also had to let the Penn police know that we have enough experience with police departments to know most of the problems that exist in this environment are not law enforcement issues, but they are issues related to all the disparities, whether they are the economic, educational, etc. And until we begin to bridge some of the gaps, and the way you bridge the gap, you invite people to the way of Allah with wisdom and beautiful preaching. So all we have to do is just really, the example of the prophet, he was the most kind and gentle, even in speaking to his enemies. And we have to see that Allah is sufficient for us if we just are willing to stand up for justice. So this is what we have facing us. You'll see a lot of injustice. And it's not always law enforcement, economic, health disparities, political, etc. Be willing to respond to the call to stand up for justice. And whether you are leading or following, be involved. Just don't get in the way, inshallah.
So I did come to the University of Pennsylvania as a high schooler. I wanted to come as a college student, but I was not accepted, mashallah. So I remember this campus, but my college experience was really at the University of Delaware. And that university was pretty apathetic politically when I was a student. And what I can say is throughout my 5 years there, and then the years that I've been able to observe the university since, there has been a lot more movement, right? With just students standing up, protesting, shutting down traffic. I mean, they've gotten very vocal, which I think is a good thing. And some of the issues that were, like when I was a student at UD, I remember like being a part of Students for Justice in Palestine. That was very controversial at the time. Like there were students that wanted to be involved that felt like if they got involved, they would end up on a list and they wouldn't get a job. Like that was what we were dealing with then. Fast forward about 8-10 years now, SJPs are popping up on a lot more campuses, more students are getting involved. And it's not just Muslim students, it's not just Palestinian students, it's Christian students, it's Jewish students. And there are actually organizations in the US now that are led by Jewish community members that are saying, this is not going to be done in my name, right? So what I've noticed now as a politician is when I used to say that I was part of SJP, people they used to tell me, you know, maybe don't talk about that. Even in the Democratic Party, they used to say, maybe don't talk about Palestine. That's an issue that divides people. And what I can say now is a lot of my colleagues in the Democratic Party agree with me and they're open about it. And so I've seen a shift just in the past 10, 15 years within our country's rhetoric around what's going on in Palestine, what's just, what's not. Another issue that came you know, to the forefront when I was a student was Black Lives Matter. And that was when the slogan Black Lives Matter was created in the US. And since then, our campuses are trying to respond, right? Even if we don't necessarily think that they're 100% genuine or 100% effective, they know that students care about these issues and they recognize that we have a strong enough voice that they have to respond in some way. Whereas when I was a student, they were shutting us down, they were trying to make things go away and put them behind the door, you know? So I'm really inspired by that. And I think it shows that even in a short period of time, when enough people speak out against something, share why it's important to them or others, you can make a change. Now, we still have all of those injustices happening, but we have a heightened sense of consciousness, I think, as a society, which is a major, you know, accomplishment, I would say. So that's my 2 cents on that question.
No, mashallah, jazakumullah khair for that, Imam and representative. I think like for me too, it's 3 things. How much time do we have? Not that, you know, we're gonna go on, but one is I'm seeing that more of our communities, masajids, MSAs, other organizations, we used to have this like photo op idea of political engagement, right? So politicians come, they give a photo, we host them, we feed them and all, and then it's all good. It's still happening, but now I think more of our community members are looking at how people are voting, right? Are they voting within the interests of our community or not? And they are starting to challenge it a little bit more. And I think that's a positive change, right? And I think we need to do more of that. And even as a politician, I'm sure you would agree, Representative. And I think that really will make our engagements much more productive, fruitful for our community. The second thing that I see is, again, like, on issues around, like, Palestine, right? It used to be sometimes people would think, oh, this is like a back home thing. Let's not keep talking about it. But we are now realizing more and more that there are connections to our everyday life here in the United States, right? There is state police, city police that goes to Israel, gets trained on, like, how to be more violent and how to be more, like, strategic about it. And then they come and then they implement it on our own communities, to Black communities, to brown communities, right? And that the exchange campaign is, like, addressing that, right? More of our community members have now, like, awareness and, like, openness, and are building coalitions around it. And I think that's really important. When we had in Philadelphia, right, so a Plain View project revealed that there were police force members, Philadelphia police members, who were posting anti-Muslim racist stuff online on their social media platforms. But different organizations, challenge that. And I think, like, that kind of challenge is becoming more and more open, and I think our communities are growing in that. I see another positive change, maybe not immediately related to politics, but our intercommunal relationships, interracial, interethnic, like, we are starting to talk more about that. And I think that's a positive change. And there are more programs that address that, and I think we need more of that. And then finally, in terms of interfaith work, we are still doing interfaith work, but I feel like our work is slowly moving towards what we call faith-based organizing, right? Coming together around common issues that impact our communities, economic challenges, urban issues, right? And we build more coalitions now. Like in our work, for example, we work with like a Vietnamese organization that's talking about gentrification in South Philadelphia, right? A Korean organization that works on, like, similar issues, or a Chinese organization that's, like, worried about, like, 76ers coming to Center City, right? And, like, gentrifying the whole area and communities being uprooted from where they grew up and where they have businesses. All of these issues, right, on Uyghur sort of like community and all, when you work across the aisle, and when we are confident in our skin and in our identity, we can exert that discourse that would have a positive impact on those around us and within our communities itself as well. And I think, inshallah, like, for all of you to be involved in that process, finding something like, in your 3, 4, 5, whatever many years you have in Philadelphia, even if you may not be from this area, to be involved in something going on, right? It doesn't need to be one or the other one of these, is really meaningful, because then you can take that away once you have that, like, job and, like, money, to maybe you will run for school board. Maybe you will make sure that, like, your school district, like, adopts Eid as a holiday, right? Maybe you will make a positive change in your workplace, making sure that nobody discriminates against, like, anybody and against Muslims. So inshallah, I see, like, many positive changes, but that we need to keep on keeping on and working on ourselves, our nafs, and what we do for those around us.
Beautiful answers, better than I expected. Not that I expected anything. All right, questions for the audience members? I would love, yep, oh man.
Assalamu alaikum. I just have maybe one, maybe two questions. Depends. So my question here is, how can we vote for somebody either Democrat or Republican if one is very liberal and the other could be very racist? So I do agree that we can vote for somebody who's Muslim, and that's for 100%. But I'm from Coatesville, the Masjid ar-Rahman, where we had the pleasure to meet you, Brother Siraj Waheed. But how can we do that? So this is one question. If you allow me one quick other question, I'll appreciate it. So the other question is, I go to Westchester University. So we have like, the diversity, you have everything, but how can you as a Muslim, like just in your classroom, and when they have those subjects of diversity, and then how can you voice what you really believe in? Like, I'm just going to be clear and forward, like for LGBT. Like if you speak up and you voice your opinion, you seem to be like against diversity. So it seems, and I'm addressing here the audience, the young people, because my problem is there is a fine line where you have to be nice, respectful, and then forget your Islamic, what is forbidden and what we should do. I appreciate it. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Okay, let me suggest this. Number one, do you know that this political division right here, I don't know the ward or the division, but they had the highest number of new registrations for the voting process in 2020 of the whole city of Philadelphia. There was a greater increase, and it's because of the students. Now, to answer the question, we don't vote for personalities or individuals. We look at who they are connected to. And here's how I suggest we make a decision as to who to vote for. Look at all the people who are connected, whether they call themselves liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, etc. Because the bottom line is somebody's going to be in office. And so the question is, do we get 50% of what we want, or do we get 20% or 0%? So I'm suggesting and I'm recommending that you do an analysis and you not only look at an individual, but you see who that individual is connected to. And it's very easy to connect the dots. Now, the other issue, we know there's a plethora of ideas that are legal, that are permissible in this environment, but we don't have to take part in everything that's on the menu. If someone wants to represent or they're inclined to the alphabet group, the LGBTs, et cetera, that's their business. Now, again, we don't endorse what they do, but at the same time, we don't partake. We don't have to support them openly. If that's what they do, that's what they do. Because again, if it's legal, we can't even be against somebody who drinks in America, because drinking is permissible, not only in America, but even in Judaism and Christianity. It's permissible. So we can't say because someone drinks that we can't have anything to do with them. We don't drink ourselves. If they drink, that's their business. What someone does with their private sexual life is their business. We wish they would not make it public and just keep it private where it should be. But they have made an issue of it. We can't avoid the issue. If it's necessary to speak about it, we speak about it. But again, we have the tradition of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we even have what is mentioned in the Quran. Don't curse their gods, because then they will curse Allah. Don't go against what someone does in their personal, private life. That's between them and Allah. But we don't want them putting it on us publicly, but they do it anyway. And we just have to sometimes be tolerant. Because remember, the Prophet was at the Kaaba, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and there were idols all around him, and he didn't let that deter him from his worship. He couldn't tell them to get rid of the idols. He's ready to make a salat. He had to do it irregardless. So let us take his example as the model of behavior for us.
I want to make sure we get other questions in. So anybody else have another question?
Oh, sister, I am not Siraj. Yeah, Siraj is out. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. Okay, so this question is somewhat related to that question. It's about encouraging voter participation among like our parents' generation. Like personally, I know that like my dad and my mom have like issues voting just because they feel like, oh, you know, whether or not we vote for a Democrat or Republican, like we're not really acting in the interest of Islam. And like from a fiqh standpoint, they're like not really sure whether or not it's a good idea. And what do you think about encouraging people's parents to take after their children and be more politically active?
I'm deferring to the Imam.
The fiqh portion, Imam Kenneth, inshallah, can address. But the other portion, like, you know, we deal, thank you, sister, for that question. Like, we deal with this a lot, right? So, I mean, like, Care Philadelphia team, like, sent like some 50,000 texts, like, you know, some 65,000 calls so far. In this election cycle, election is on November 8th, right? Monday is last day to apply for mail-in ballots, because you might have class, you may not be able to show up to the ballot. But the way that we are trying to address this is to encourage Muslims to think about what is two top issues that are important for them in their lives. Right? You will see outside the hashtag #MyMuslimVote campaign at the care table, there is like, you know, what we call like the water cards, and it says my Muslim vote is for, right? There are three options there. If somebody thinks about that, right, and if for them, like healthcare is important, or if for them, right, the fact that, you know, they want to be safe in the society is important, then that can help them make a decision around how they can remove harm and like make sure that, you know, benefits can accrue for them and for those around them, right? So the idea of this, like, you know, darb mafasid ve jalb masali, then can come into the picture, and Imam Kenneth can talk more about that. But we really like need to think around that, right? Because there are discourses that says, oh, like participation in democracy is like shirk, and all like these discourses of course exist, but at the same time, you can see from a, like, you know, fardh kifaya, societal obligations point of view, voting as an obligation that's available to you. I mean, I cannot vote. I am not a citizen, right? Those of you who are citizens here have a responsibility, in my opinion, such that those who cannot vote but live in the society, right, can be prevented from harm. And however, that's then still your responsibility to think around what's important to me and which one of the candidates is available will be able to do this, and then hold those individuals accountable for what they do. If they fail you, you will have an opportunity to like correct them, right? By like giving or not giving your vote. But you know.
And so remember at Hudaybiyah, there was a proposal that was made, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't agree with all of it, but he made a decision beforehand. He said, I will enter into an agreement with them as long as they do nothing that will violate any of Allah's sanctity. Now, the sanctity that they can violate can only affect you as an individual when it comes to your Islam, your ibadah, your aqidah. As long as they don't do anything to affect that, and they represent what the Prophet saw in the Najash as one who was just and one who wouldn't interfere with the affairs of the Muslims. And so the Muslims were permitted to go there and to live under their jurisdiction and to take part in their society, even to the extent that they went into the court when the issue came up of extradition and immigration status, etc. They accepted the ruling, but they also made their position known. How do we make our position known? As Dr. Ahmet said, we have to have issues that we are passionate about. And we have to show them that we recognize how do we get our agenda on the public policy and make it part of the procedure. And the way you do it is you show up and you say, this is our position, simply by voting. but then follow up your vote. Don't just vote as an objective, was an ends. Voting is a means. And so we show that we have issues that we are concerned about, and the way we're going to show you what our concern is, all 250,000 Muslims in the Philadelphia area, we're going to vote. And we'll show you that we are passionate. We'll let you know what our agenda is, and we're not going to be like the average voter. When election day is over, you just go back home. No, we will be down at the office on Monday morning or Wednesday after the election or after the results are in, and we'll make certain that our agenda is part of the discussion. And we will follow up our agenda because, again, remember, we have in the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, once he got the agreement with the one who was chosen as the representative of the Quraysh, they followed up the next year and they made the Umrah. And then they followed up and they made the Hajj. And then they made the Hajj and they made the Hajj and they made the Hajj. And it's been going on ever since. But it started out with them accepting a political decision that they have a part in because the companions didn't understand in the beginning. But when Allah revealed to them, "Inna fatahna lakum fathan mubina," we've given you a clear victory. And I'm saying to you, if we can show up in numbers that will have an impact, the victory is there. And our sister here is proof.
I have nothing to add. That was good. I'm writing notes.
I got time for one more question. Oh boy, Adib. You can ask them personally.
Assalamu alaikum. This is for sister, the representative Medina. First up, shout out, I went to school in Newark too, just Newark, New Jersey. That being said, I was curious from a Muslim politician's perspective, what can the community do, whether as students or at large in our local communities, to best support politicians locally as well as on the national front? I do know that sometimes we don't feel as connected to the political process, but it is really easy. You can just walk into your representative's office. So like, where is that? Like, what can we do to fix that connection? And what would you like to see from the community?
Great question. So I think you know the answer because you kind of started to give it, right? Going in and talking to your legislator. I mentioned, can you guys hear me? Yeah, okay. I mentioned how some folks come to my office all the time, right? And they tell me, this bill's bad, XYZ reasons why, hope you won't support it, et cetera, right? Most of the time, I don't see Muslims doing that. And when I do, it's one or two, and they're in a coalition, like Brother Ahmed mentioned, about something else, right? It's not about our community specifically. And one of the concepts that was mentioned with the photo op, right? That was my introduction to Muslim advocacy in politics. Was our U.S. senator came on Eid, and he got in front of all of us, and he talked about how he supports our community, and I knew he, supported funding Israel's military. I knew all those things, and I was like, why is he here? People were excited that he was there and they wanted a picture, and then he was going to leave and he wasn't accountable to anyone. So one of the things that I was able to do in my first term was to host a Ramadan iftar, but not the iftar where they show up and they get to take pictures and they maybe put on like a keffiyeh or something and put it on their Facebook. I sat each legislator at a table with folks from their area, and they had to listen. And that was the goal of the event. And I actually got some pushback from Muslim members of the community who were like, why did you make it so formal? Why was there an agenda, et cetera, et cetera? We should have just had them come and enjoy and take pictures. So I have a different philosophical approach to that. And I think we need to do more of that. I think when we invite politicians into our communities, there should be an expectation that they're going to hear whatever our demands are, whatever our priorities are, and they should be looking to fulfill them for us and not expecting that we're just going to support them because they came. Right. So that's one thing. I think if we approach issues like that, events like that with that mindset, we'll have a better outcome. And it's not just them coming to us, but it's us going to their events, right? They hear from certain constituents often. They need to hear from our community just as often.
Loki, can you invite us to the iftar next Ramadan? That sounds fun, bro. I want to get an invite. Okay, that'll conclude our panel for today. Can I please get a round of applause for our panelists? Jazakallah khair. I don't know if you guys are sticking around, but feel free to come up and ask them questions. We're going to be having salat upstairs, so go do that. I don't know, register to vote, do something, and then come back here at 5 p.m. We're going to be having spoken word by Kashmir Maryam.